Have you ever felt like something's off, but you just can't put your finger on it? Maybe you've encountered someone who leaves you questioning your reality, someone whose behavior just doesn't add up. If you've been through this, chances are you're dealing with a sociopath. In today's video, we're diving into 7 warning signs you're dealing with a sociopath. And trust me, when you see these red flags, it's time to run. But here's the twist. We're not just talking about manipulation and deceit. We're bringing in Stoic philosophy to help you understand how to handle these toxic relationships with clarity, wisdom, and strength. The Stoics believed in cultivating inner peace and discernment, and this mindset will be your armor in dealing with individuals who prey on your emotions. From the cold indifference behind their smile to their remorseless actions, these signs can be subtle, but once you know what to look for, you'll see through their mask. Whether it's a partner, friend, or coworker, the sooner you spot these traits, the sooner you can protect yourself. So grab your journal, take notes, and get ready to empower yourself with Stoic tools to reclaim your peace and walk away from chaos. Let's dive in. Sign 1, the illusion of charm. Think back to a time when someone entered your life and seemed almost too perfect. Not just friendly, but deeply attentive. Not just kind, but captivating. They remembered small things you said, looked you directly in the eye, and made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. It felt genuine, even rare, like finally being seen for who you are. But not long after, something felt off. Maybe it moved too quickly. Maybe it felt too polished. Your instincts, often quiet but wise, whispered a question you didn't want to hear. Is this real or is this rehearsed? This is often the first and most overlooked sign that you may be dealing with someone emotionally deceptive, perhaps even a sociopath. And it's easy to miss because it doesn't feel threatening. It feels like connection. That's what makes it so effective. Sociopaths don't present as villains. They don't appear with obvious red flags. Instead, they learn you, they reflect you, and then they connect, not to care, but to control. The charm isn't sincere affection, it's a tool. A strategy, because if they can win over your emotions early, they don't need to earn your trust over time. They bypass that process completely and gain access to your thoughts, your choices, your loyalty. Let's put it in perspective. Imagine you start a new job and one colleague instantly clicks with you. On the first day, they already know your favorite coffee. By the second, they're praising you in front of others. Within a week, you're sharing personal stories over lunch. It feels like you've known them for years. But ask yourself, can a true connection form that quickly, or is something being crafted? Is it unfolding naturally or being directed? Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When a person's thoughts are rooted in manipulation, no matter how charming they seem, their actions will eventually reveal that stain. This kind of charm isn't built on empathy, it's built on calculation. And what makes it powerful is that it rewards you emotionally. It lifts you up with validation, attention, and rapid intimacy. It feels like affirmation, but often it's misdirection. In romantic relationships, this can look like love bombing, intense affection, quick declarations, and fast commitments. In friendships, it's a person who mimics your values and interests. In the workplace, it's someone who immediately aligns with you, champions your efforts, and builds rapport with impressive speed. It feels good, that's the point. But it's often not real. It's a mirror of what you most want to see. True connection unfolds. It takes its time. It allows room for disagreement, space to think, and the freedom to question. But when charm is used manipulatively, that space is never given. Instead, it's replaced by urgency. A rush designed to bypass your intuition. Ancient Stoic wisdom teaches us to be wary of anything that demands urgency without giving space for thought. When something is authentic, it has nothing to fear from patience. But manipulation thrives in momentum. One subtle sign to watch for is how conversations unfold. When you speak, does the topic quickly shift back to them? Do they share just enough vulnerability to keep you engaged, but always guide the emotional spotlight to themselves? Over time, you may notice they're not deeply listening. They're gathering, positioning, redirecting. Seneca once said, "Only the wise man is free." And in this context, freedom means seeing clearly. It means honoring your instincts, even when everything on the surface seems positive. So how do you protect yourself? You slow down. You observe, not just what is said, but how it's said and how quickly it's moving. Do they encourage your individuality or expect you to mirror theirs? Do you feel free to express disagreement or subtly discouraged from it? Are you allowed to take space, or do they fill every moment with attention? Real connection doesn't demand a performance. It allows presence. It grows through consistency, honesty, and mutual respect. Sociopaths often move fast because they know once trust is earned, it becomes a lever. That's why their charm is so intense. It's designed to win you over quickly, before you notice the cracks beneath the surface. So when someone's charm feels a little too smooth, too fast, take a step back. Observe quietly. Let time do what it always does. Reveal what was hidden, because real charm doesn't rush. It doesn't overwhelm. It simply shows up, steadily and without agenda. And if asking the right questions early on brings a little discomfort, that's a worthwhile price for peace of mind, clarity, and self-respect. Sign 2, the absence of real empathy. There's a specific kind of emptiness that emerges when you open up to someone, only to realize they're not truly with you. They may listen, even say the right things, but their presence feels thin, their responses rehearsed. What's missing is not politeness, it's presence. And that subtle absence is often the second major sign that you're dealing with someone emotionally detached, or worse, a sociopath, the absence of real empathy. To understand this better, consider a figure from history, Howard Hughes, the legendary aviator, film director, and business tycoon. Brilliant, visionary, and endlessly ambitious, Hughes captivated the world with his innovations and mystique. But those who knew him personally often described something far different, a man increasingly disconnected from the emotional lives of others. As his empire grew, so did his isolation. Even in his early years, Hughes had trouble forming genuine emotional bonds. He could be charming and generous, lavish gifts, grand gestures, but he struggled to offer sustained emotional presence. Actress Katharine Hepburn, who had a relationship with Hughes in the 1930s, once described him as someone who watched people rather than listened to them. He paid attention to detail, but not in service of connection, in service of control. At one point, when Hepburn's close friend passed away, she expected support from Hughes. Instead, she was met with cold silence. No comfort, no inquiry, no space for her grief. He quickly shifted the topic to a business idea, as if emotional pain were a brief distraction in a world too fast for feelings. This wasn't malice, it was detachment. Hughes wasn't incapable of kindness, but the connection lacked depth. It was functional, not emotional. And in time, this emotional absence became unbearable. Not just for Hepburn, but for many others in his life. The absence of empathy doesn't always show itself in cruelty. Often, it looks like distance. Emotional conversations become one-sided. Vulnerability is met with polite silence, or worse, turned into a moment about them. You begin to notice that your feelings don't land. They're acknowledged, perhaps, but never truly held. Stoicism reminds us that character is revealed not in words, but in action. As Epictetus wrote, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Empathy isn't about knowing what to say. It's about being present enough to feel with someone. And those who cannot do that, who remain unmoved, indifferent, are not engaging in connection. They're managing appearances. People who lack empathy may still perform the motions. They might send flowers, offer sympathy, show up physically, but emotionally they're distant. Over time, you feel the weight of carrying the connection alone. And that weight is often the first thing your intuition notices. To protect yourself, pay close attention to how someone responds when you're vulnerable. Not with grand displays, but in quiet moments. Do they stay with you emotionally, or do they steer the conversation away? Do they ask about your experience, or shift back to their own? Also, look at their consistency. Do they follow up days later or forget the moment entirely? Do they offer comfort without agenda, or do they use your pain as an opening for their own narrative? Empathy can't be faked for long. It requires emotional effort that few can sustain without sincerity. And when it's not there, you don't need proof. You feel it. So remember, you don't need perfect words. You need presence. You don't need dramatic gestures. You need someone who stays, listens, and remembers. The people who truly care won't just echo your feelings. They'll hold space for them. And if you sense, over time, that space is missing, don't explain it away. Trust the silence, because emotional absence is often the first sign that someone is not safe for your inner world. Sign 3, the quiet art of control. Imagine you're sitting in a meeting with a colleague, someone who always seems calm, collected, and a bit too charming. You present your ideas with confidence, feeling sure of your work, but as the conversation unfolds, something begins to shift. At first it's subtle, a lighthearted comment here, a slight adjustment to your phrasing there. Then after a few moments, you find yourself questioning your own ideas. Did I really explain that well? Was my point as clear as I thought? This creeping sense of doubt is exactly what a sociopath wants to cultivate. Sociopaths don't dominate with loud accusations or threats. Instead, they manipulate reality through small, calculated shifts in perspective, until you're no longer sure of what's true. And this is the quiet art of control. Take the case of Henry, a senior executive who had been working under the mentorship of his boss, Greg. At first, Greg appeared to be a supportive guide, helping Henry refine his pitches, offering feedback in meetings, and giving him what seemed like sound advice. But over time, small cracks began to appear. Greg would subtly challenge Henry's recollection of events. "That's not how I remember it," or "I don't think you're seeing it quite right." Greg was careful, never overtly accusing Henry of being wrong. But slowly, Henry's certainty began to erode. Then things escalated. Greg would insist on taking the credit for ideas Henry had presented in meetings. At first, it was 1 or 2 times, small victories. But as the pattern repeated, Henry started to question his own contributions. When he spoke up in meetings, Greg would deflect, smoothly shifting attention back to his own thoughts until Henry's voice became quieter and quieter. Eventually, Henry found himself agreeing to things he wouldn't have considered before, decisions he wasn't happy with, projects he wasn't passionate about. This subtle manipulation wasn't about overtly belittling Henry. It was about diminishing his confidence, making him doubt his own judgment until he felt he had no choice but to follow Greg's lead. By the time Henry realized what was happening, he wasn't just questioning his work, he was questioning himself. And the more he doubted himself, the more dependent he became on Greg's approval. The sociopath isn't trying to win every argument. They're trying to win control over your perception of reality. They don't need to be overtly aggressive. Instead, they erode your sense of self and make you question your thoughts, your choices, and your beliefs. And once they've made you feel small enough, confused enough, they can slowly take over your life, one decision at a time. From a Stoic perspective, this manipulation distorts your ability to trust your reason. Epictetus warned us, when someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval. But the sociopath's goal is to destabilize that inner grounding, to make you reliant on them for validation. It's not just about rewriting history. Sociopaths also play with your relationships. They'll subtly plant seeds of doubt, saying things like, "Have you noticed how Rachel hasn't been supportive of you lately?" Or, "I don't think your friend Mark really has your best interests at heart." These little whispers aren't just offhand comments. They're tools used to drive a wedge between you and your support system. And as you begin to withdraw, isolating yourself from others, you fall deeper into their control. But the most dangerous part of this manipulation isn't what the sociopath takes from you. It's what they give, the illusion of support. They offer to help with your work, drive you to appointments, handle small tasks for you. At first, it seems like kindness, but slowly your independence begins to disappear. You start relying on them more and more, and one day you might find yourself asking for their permission to make a simple decision, wondering how you ever got to this point. One woman I worked with shared her experience. He offered to help me manage my career, and at first it was a relief. But over time I realized I couldn't make a decision without consulting him first. It was like I'd given up my own autonomy for the sake of convenience. This isn't care, it's control. Sociopaths are not loud or chaotic. They're strategic, patient, and methodical. Every guilt trip, every subtle comment, every well-timed deflection is a move designed to destabilize you and make you dependent on them for direction. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and when reality feels distorted, the first step is to reclaim clarity. After you interact with this person, ask yourself, do I feel stronger or smaller? Do I feel more certain or more confused? These aren't small feelings, they're red flags. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. If someone is constantly manipulating your thoughts, your memories, and your relationships, it's not love, it's a tactic. And you have every right to protect your mind from being rewritten. Reclaim your sense of self. Reconnect with people who knew you before the manipulation began. Stop justifying their actions as complicated or difficult. This isn't complexity, it's corrosion. If you find yourself constantly shrinking, defending, or explaining just to keep the peace, remember, there is no peace, only manipulation. And the only way to win in a game built on distortion is to stop playing altogether. The sociopath doesn't win by loud aggression. They win through quiet, calculated confusion. But the moment you reclaim your clarity, you break their hold. The Stoics faced hardship head-on, and in the same spirit, you must face this quiet manipulation. The sociopath's greatest weapon is not how they lie loudly, but how they distort the truth softly. Listen closely, not just to their words, but to the silences between them. Pay attention to how they make you feel over time. And if your once clear mind has become foggy, you know exactly what to do. Walk away, not with fear, but with wisdom. Sign 4. The mind that rejects accountability. Imagine being in a relationship where nothing is ever their fault, where every mistake, every slip-up, every failure somehow gets flipped around until you're the one carrying the blame. It's not loud or aggressive, it's subtle, calculated, and exhausting. This is sign number 4 that you're dealing with a sociopath, the mind that rejects accountability. We've all had moments where we make excuses. Maybe we let something slip or failed to follow through. It's human, but for a sociopath, it's a way of life. They don't just make excuses. They've mastered the art of never being responsible for anything. To them, guilt is for the weak. Apologies are a form of weakness, and consequences are a rule that applies to everyone but them. Picture this. You've been dating someone for a while, and you've planned a dinner for their birthday. They say they'll arrive at 7. By 9, still no word. When they finally show up, instead of an apology, they act like you're the one in the wrong. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? They ask. It's just dinner. What started as their broken promise has quickly turned into your overreaction. That's how the sociopath works, by twisting the situation so that you're left defending your emotions instead of confronting their behavior. And if you press them, if you try to hold them accountable, they don't just deny it, they downplay it, minimize it, and eventually turn the tables. First, they deny, that never happened. Then they minimize, you're overreacting. If that doesn't work, they justify, I had no choice. And finally, they attack. You're just trying to control me. It's not about truth, it's about deflecting responsibility at any cost. This pattern is the direct opposite of one of Stoicism's core beliefs, responsibility. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. But the sociopath doesn't seek truth. They seek to escape any form of responsibility. In doing so, they destroy trust, leaving you questioning everything. What's even more unsettling is how effortlessly they lie. Most people feel at least a bit of discomfort when they lie. But for a sociopath, lying is second nature. They can lie with a straight face without hesitation, and they don't even bother keeping their story straight. If you catch them in one lie, they'll just deny it ever happened, or accuse you of misinterpreting the situation. This isn't just dishonesty, it's manipulation at its core. It's a tactic called reality rewriting. They'll tell you that promises were never made, that insults were never spoken, or that events happened in a completely different way than you remember. Before long, you're second-guessing yourself. You start replaying conversations, checking texts, wondering if you misunderstood. And in doing so, you start trusting their version of reality over your own. This is spiritual erosion, as the Stoics would say. You're no longer guided by your reason, your own perception of truth. You're walking in their distorted version of reality. But the most alarming thing about sociopaths is how they externalize blame. They never fail alone. They never fall on their own sword. It's always someone else. The cheating? It's because you didn't show enough attention. The lost job? It's because the boss didn't appreciate their brilliance. The argument? It's because you're too emotional, too sensitive, never them. In healthy relationships, people can own their mistakes. They can say, I was wrong. They can repair the damage and grow. But in the world of a sociopath, that's impossible, because growth requires humility, repair requires remorse, and they have neither. One man described living with his sociopathic partner as living in a world where he couldn't see himself anymore. Everything I thought I knew about them, about me, got twisted. And by the end, I wasn't just doubting them, I was doubting myself. That's exactly what a sociopath wants. The more uncertain you become, the more they can control. If you start doubting your own perception, you'll begin to trust theirs. And once that happens, you're no longer standing on solid ground. You're sinking in quicksand. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." When your thoughts, your judgments, and your perception are hijacked, peace becomes an illusion. To regain your peace, you first need to reclaim your clarity. Keep track of the facts. Write things down. Don't engage with their narrative. Stick to your own. Trust what you've experienced, even when they try to convince you otherwise. And above all, remember, a person who refuses to face the consequences of their actions is not just difficult, they're dangerous. Because when they refuse accountability, they've granted themselves permission to continue their harmful behavior without remorse. Without self-reflection, there's no growth. Without accountability, there's no safety. If you see this behavior clearly, don't wait for more proof. Take action. Walk away if necessary. Create space, but never allow someone who refuses to face their actions to stay in your life. Your peace isn't something they can give you. It's something you must claim for yourself. Sign 4. The mind that rejects accountability. Imagine being in a relationship where nothing is ever their fault, where every mistake, every slip-up, every failure somehow gets flipped around until you're the one carrying the blame. It's not loud or aggressive, it's subtle, calculated, and exhausting. This is sign number 4 that you're dealing with a sociopath, the mind that rejects accountability. We've all had moments where we make excuses. Maybe we let something slip or fail to follow through. It's human. But for a sociopath, it's a way of life. They don't just make excuses. They've mastered the art of never being responsible for anything. To them, guilt is for the weak. Apologies are a form of weakness. And consequences are a rule that applies to everyone but them. Picture this. You've been dating someone for a while, and you've planned a dinner for their birthday. They say they'll arrive at 7. By 9, still no word. When they finally show up, instead of an apology, they act like you're the one in the wrong. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" they ask. "It's just dinner." What started as their broken promise has quickly turned into your overreaction. That's how the sociopath works, by twisting the situation so that you're left defending your emotions instead of confronting their behavior. And if you press them, if you try to hold them accountable, they don't just deny it, they downplay it, minimize it, and eventually turn the tables. First, they deny, "That never happened." Then they minimize, "You're overreacting." If that doesn't work, they justify, "I had no choice." And finally, they attack, "You're just trying to control me." It's not about truth, it's about deflecting responsibility at any cost. This pattern is the direct opposite of one of Stoicism's core beliefs: responsibility. Marcus Aurelius wrote, If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. But the sociopath doesn't seek truth. They seek to escape any form of responsibility. In doing so, they destroy trust, leaving you questioning everything. What's even more unsettling is how effortlessly they lie. Most people feel at least a bit of discomfort when they lie. But for a sociopath, lying is second nature. They can lie with a straight face without hesitation, and they don't even bother keeping their story straight. If you catch them in one lie, they'll just deny it ever happened or accuse you of misinterpreting the situation. This isn't just dishonesty, it's manipulation at its core. It's a tactic called reality rewriting. They'll tell you that promises were never made, that insults were never spoken, or that events happened in a completely different way than you remember. Before long, you're second-guessing yourself. You start replaying conversations, checking texts, wondering if you misunderstood. And in doing so, you start trusting their version of reality over your own. This is spiritual erosion, as the Stoics would say. You're no longer guided by your reason, your own perception of truth. You're walking in their distorted version of reality. But the most alarming thing about sociopaths is how they externalize blame. They never fail alone. They never fall on their own sword. It's always someone else. The cheating? It's because you didn't show enough attention. The lost job? It's because the boss didn't appreciate their brilliance. The argument? It's because you're too emotional, too sensitive, never them. In healthy relationships, people can own their mistakes. They can say, I was wrong. They can repair the damage and grow. But in the world of a sociopath, that's impossible, because growth requires humility, repair requires remorse, and they have neither. One man described living with his sociopathic partner as living in a world where he couldn't see himself anymore. Everything I thought I knew about them, about me, got twisted. And by the end, I wasn't just doubting them, I was doubting myself. That's exactly what a sociopath wants. The more uncertain you become, the more they can control. If you start doubting your own perception, you'll begin to trust theirs. And once that happens, you're no longer standing on solid ground. You're sinking in quicksand. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." When your thoughts, your judgments, and your perception are hijacked, peace becomes an illusion. To regain your peace, you first need to reclaim your clarity. Keep track of the facts. Write things down. Don't engage with their narrative. Stick to your own. Trust what you've experienced, even when they try to convince you otherwise. Sign 5. The illusion of intimacy as isolation. Loneliness can creep in quietly, not with empty silence, but with a constant presence that whispers, "You don't need anyone else." It begins to feel like intimacy at first, an overwhelming closeness that promises understanding and support. But over time, you begin to notice that it isn't a connection that's deepening, but a trap being slowly set. This is sign number 5 that you're dealing with a sociopath, the isolation disguised as intimacy. At first, everything seems perfect. You're made to feel special, like no one understands you better than this person. Their attentiveness feels genuine, and their affection seems unwavering. Yet as the relationship develops, the comments begin to change. Maybe your friends don't appreciate you the way I do. I just don't think your family understands how much stress you're under. Slowly, their words pull you away from your support network, subtly encouraging you to rely more on them and less on others. Consider the story of Tom, who found himself in a relationship with a woman named Clara. At first, Clara seemed like everything Tom had ever wanted. Thoughtful, attentive, and full of care. But as they grew closer, Clara began making small, dismissive remarks about Tom's close friends. "Isn't it strange how Mark always seems to forget your birthday?" Or, "Sarah's been acting distant lately. I'm not sure she's really there for you." Tom didn't realize it at first, but these comments started to erode his trust in the people who had been his closest friends for years. Slowly, he began spending less time with them and more time with Clara. The more he distanced himself, the more Clara seemed to validate his feelings of uncertainty about his friendships, until one day, his world had shrunk, and Clara was the only person who felt truly reliable. From a Stoic perspective, this is a breakdown of personal autonomy, something Marcus Aurelius warns against when he writes, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When someone systematically weakens your sense of self-reliance and isolates you from the people who know you best, they're altering your perceptions and controlling your thoughts. The sociopath's goal is not to build genuine intimacy, it's to create dependency. They manipulate your emotions so that you believe they're the only one who truly cares for you, and everyone else is either a threat or disappointment. This process doesn't involve overt threats. Rather, it's a slow, insidious erosion of your relationships and independence. So how do you defend against this? The Stoic approach is clear. Return to your foundation. Take stock of your relationships before the manipulation started. Recognize the value of the connections that kept you grounded and reach out to them again. True intimacy comes from mutual respect and independence, not control masked as devotion. Remember, the sociopath will make you feel like they're the only one who understands you, but in reality, they're the one creating confusion and dependence. Seneca reminds us, associate with those who will make a better man of you. So when someone is making you feel smaller or more isolated, it's time to look beyond their words and reassess whether they're truly offering love or just control. Your true allies are those who encourage you to grow and trust your own strength. Anyone who demands that you cut ties with others or makes you feel like they're your only support is not a source of love. They are a manipulator. Sign 6. The Trail of Ruined Bonds. Take a moment to reflect on the people in your life. Consider the relationships that have stood the test of time: family, friends, a significant other. Healthy bonds typically evolve slowly, founded on mutual understanding, occasional conflict, and recovery, culminating in a deeper trust. But when you're involved with a sociopath, this natural rhythm is disrupted. Instead of growth, there's destruction. And that's the 6th sign you're dealing with a sociopath: the trail of ruined bonds. Sociopaths don't build relationships, they tear them down. Their past is marked by severed ties, not the messy yet real connections that most people experience. There are no old friends who still stand by them, no mentors who helped shape them. Instead, there are scattered stories of betrayal, conflict, and bitterness. Everyone before you is either a villain or a fool, and that's how they tell the story. Imagine listening to someone talk about their past relationships. Are they always the victim? Are their ex-partners described as unstable, toxic, or abusive? Yet no responsibility is ever placed on them. This is not honesty, it's strategic storytelling. Sociopaths are masters at painting themselves as the wrong party, turning every failed relationship into a tale of how the world failed them. In my own experience, I watched as my sociopathic ex-partner slowly detached me from everyone around me. They spoke poorly about my friends and family, planted seeds of doubt in my mind about their intentions, and made me feel as though I couldn't trust anyone but them. I was gradually isolated, losing my sense of clarity and perspective. The story they told about themselves, how others had wronged them, felt compelling at first, but eventually I realized it was a repeated pattern, a way to control my perception of reality. Imagine hearing someone recount their past with an ever-shifting narrative. First, they were a brilliant employee, then a misunderstood genius, then a victim of circumstances. The inconsistencies are glaring, yet every time you question them, they become defensive or angry. It's as though they wear truth like a costume, not as a foundation for their identity, but as a mask for manipulation. When a sociopath recounts past relationships, pay attention to the details. Are they always the victim? Do they consistently paint exes as unstable or abusive without a hint of personal accountability? This is manipulation disguised as vulnerability. They may even idealize you at first, making you feel like you are their salvation. But as the cycle progresses, the same pattern emerges. You're worshipped, criticized, and eventually discarded. You never see it coming, but by then, you're already part of the destruction. Even the simplest facts about their life can be inconsistent. Job titles, timelines, places they've lived, all of it shifts depending on who's asking. And when you try to clarify, they get defensive or angry, not willing to provide any transparency. This is because truth isn't a foundation for them, It's simply a tool to maintain control. What's even more dangerous is their ability to exploit your empathy. They tell tales of childhood trauma, abusive exes, or past betrayals, not to seek healing, but to manipulate your compassion. You start thinking, I'll never treat them the way others have. And before you know it, you're tolerating things you never should. The Stoics warned us about being drawn into these patterns. Seneca said, "A man is as wretched as he has convinced himself to be." Sociopaths see themselves as the wounded hero of their own story. They use their pain to disarm and entrap you. If you notice a pattern of ruined relationships in someone's past, don't dismiss it. It's not just a story, it's a strategy. The sociopath's history is not a guide for who they are. It's a roadmap for how they manipulate you into becoming another casualty. Make the choice now. Will you be the next victim in their long trail of destruction? Sign 7, the absence of remorse. Behind their smile, there's a final sign that stands out, one that's both chilling and revealing. It's not loud, it doesn't scream for attention. It's silent, and its presence lingers in the form of indifference. This is the 7th sign you're dealing with a sociopath, the remorseless mind behind the mask. Imagine this. You've been hurt, trust has been broken, promises are left in tatters. Your world feels like it's falling apart, and as you search for some form of empathy, you wait, hoping for a sign, anything that they might acknowledge your pain. Maybe a flicker of guilt, a hint of apology, but instead they look back at you with cold indifference. No remorse, no apology, just an emotionless gaze, maybe even a smile, as if you were never really hurt at all. And in that moment, the illusion falls away. You're not facing confusion or denial. You're facing a void, not the absence of understanding, but the absence of humanity itself. Sociopaths don't experience harm in the same way you do. They don't feel guilty or burdened by your suffering. Where you long for reconciliation, they are calculating how to come out on top. Where you search for closure, they are counting how much leverage they have left. Your pain? It's nothing but data for them, useful in determining how far they can push you, how much you'll tolerate. When you confront them, don't expect an apology or even the truth. What you'll get is a rewrite of reality. You're overreacting. I never said that. They'll twist the events to fit their narrative, reshaping the facts to suit their needs. And if they tell you, I don't remember that, don't take it as forgetfulness. Take it as a sign that to them, it never mattered. From a Stoic perspective, this is the antithesis of virtue. The absence of remorse isn't just a lack of empathy, it's a refusal to grow. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." A person who never feels remorse never learns. They never evolve. They don't develop the capacity to be trusted or to change. The challenges that shape character are not obstacles for sociopaths. They are ignored because those challenges don't fit into their view of the world. They don't care to rise above them. So if you find yourself pleading with someone who meets your pain with cold indifference, understand this. You're not dealing with someone who made a mistake. You're dealing with someone who views life as a game, and you're just a piece on their board. The solution isn't anger or revenge. The Stoic approach is detachment, not from emotion, but from illusion. You must accept that an apology will never come. Closure won't be handed to you. And that's okay because you don't need it from them to move on. What you need is the courage to walk away from what harms you. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, the best revenge is not to be like him who performed the injury. So walk away, not in bitterness, but with clarity. That's where your freedom begins. You've seen the signs. Now protect your peace, set clear boundaries, trust your instincts, and never apologize for leaving what harms you behind. So there you have it, 7 warning signs that you're dealing with a sociopath. Remember, recognizing these patterns is the first step to protecting yourself. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, our responses, our boundaries, and our peace of mind. If you've noticed any of these traits in someone close to you, trust your instincts and take action. You deserve relationships that bring clarity, not confusion. Don't be afraid to walk away from toxicity, even if it feels difficult. Stay strong, stay wise, and keep cultivating your inner peace. Thanks for watching. Until next time.